Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Before we start, and while we're waiting for everyone to join, I would like to thank you again for coming, and I would like to remind you that within our career initiative, we have a career section on our website where you can find new vacancies from our members which are related to private equity, and you can also submit your CV, which we will later share with our members who are looking for new talents. So please check this out. I would like to let you know that we also have career adventure webinars every month. All our guests are very different, and you can also share your wishes for the future guests and topics in the chat. So today our guest is Persefoni Noulika from BlackRock. She's the director in the private equity. And Persefoni, good evening to you, and thank you very much for coming. I will let you introduce yourself, so let's start with that, so people at least know who you are, where you come from, and how you ended up in BlackRock.
Great, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here and speak to you. So my name is Persefoni Noulika. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. I'm a director in the private equity team here within BlackRock and within the alternative investment strategies at BlackRock. And I originally come from Greece. I spent I left Greece when I was about 17. I spent about 10 years in the UK and somehow ended up in Switzerland. So I've been here over the last kind of 7 to 8 years.
So before I go on with my first question, I would like to remind everyone that you can ask Persefoni your own questions, and you can leave them in the Q&A section or in the chat. We will check them at the end of the session. So please feel free to do so, and we will try to answer all of your questions. So Persefoni, I think I would like to start with the question, first of all, what did you study, and how were you recruited to BlackRock?
Mm-hmm. Great. So I studied economics. That was my main degree. I did my undergraduate in the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and then I did a master's in economics and specifically focusing on monetary policy and econometrics at the London School of Economics. And then I graduated in 2008, which was, some people might not remember, but pretty much the worst possible year you could graduate. And then I worked in consulting for about a year. I think my intention was to get into banking. So, as things were evolving around that sector at the time, I did consulting for about a year, and then I moved into banking. So I was part of the M&A team at UBS. So I spent, about 3.5 years there, kind of my analyst years at UBS M&A, and then I moved to a private equity fund here in Switzerland, focusing more on the natural resources sector. I did that for about 3.5 years, and then joined BlackRock in 2017 in the private equity team. And just a bit of background to how I joined, which I know was your second question. So the job posting was on LinkedIn. I was lucky enough because I actually went for lunch with a friend of mine, and she knew someone at the team who had just mentioned that morning to her that they were looking for a role. So she mentioned that to me, and I got in touch with with her friend, and she was very helpful in terms of introducing me to the team, what they do. So I applied for the position, and then it was basically I would say the two main rounds of the process was there was a first round with more personal type of interviews, and then there was a second round which was more of the assessment center. So it was more one-on-one interviews, and then there was also a modeling test, a writing test, and a case study, and then following that there were a couple of kind of additional interviews, but more confirmatory at that stage.
That's quite a process.
It's fairly typical in private equity, but yeah, it's yeah, it's the assessment center, I would say, is probably the most intense process. Yeah.
But I also think that case studies is quite a common thing to ask people when you hire them.
Yeah, that's right.
I think one of our members also shared while we did the job fair a while ago, and one of our members, they also gave people some assessments in order to check their skills.
That's great. Yeah, all I know. All I know is
it's like going to an exam.
Exactly. All I know is people tell me I was super nervous, but apparently I did well since I got the job. But yeah, I was clearly very, very nervous. So
I can imagine. Process. I always forget everything when I do such things. Yes, but like now working at BlackRock, how do you feel within the company, and what do you think about the corporate culture? Is it more strict? Is it a strict company with very strict borders, or is it a more open and friendly one? Not a friendly one, but more with entrepreneurial spirit? Yeah. Because companies we have within the association are very, very different. Some are really strict and they have clear borders of what you can do, how you can behave. And there are companies which are very, flexible and very open-minded, like EIF, for example. So what kind of a company is BlackRock?
So I would say it's very much the latter. So it is an entrepreneurial company. It was actually built like that. So it was effectively built like a startup in the 80s and then just kind of continued growing and growing in size. So the culture of the company is very entrepreneurial. I would say, I've been through a few institutions in my life. I would say it's probably quite unusual in the financial services sector to find a company that's, open-minded when it comes to the ability to move around, to do different things within one company. So not just necessarily, have your own silo and just, focus on one thing. I think BlackRock really encourages people moving around and exploring different roles because, the culture is very much that, it benefits the overall organization for different people to bring different ideas to different teams. And then there's also a strong culture of mobility as well when it comes to geography, which is obviously a strong disadvantage, and it's unlike other financial services institutions. So I would say it's I'm personally very happy, and it's a very entrepreneurial, open culture. Of course, BlackRock has a corporate policy. There is a strong emphasis on diversity and inclusion, and there's a strong emphasis on the ethos and how we treat each other as kind of colleagues and employees. But aside from within that context, I would say it's people are encouraged to be innovative and think about basically be in charge of their careers and think about, okay, where do I want to be? How does this suit the organization, and how can I make it work for me?
All right. And we know, like everyone knows, that BlackRock is a huge organization, probably the biggest in this area. And how many people are actually employed in Europe, in private equity in particular? Like if we take the office in Zurich, if we also, of course, speak about Luxembourg itself, and what would you say is the differentiation in the types of fields the offices work in? Because I think in Luxembourg you don't have the private equity team, you have someone else.
That's right. Yeah. So I would say, so Europe broadly, so BlackRock Europe is about 6,000 people, which I would say is large, but not too large. And then within private equity, we have about 25 professionals. And that would be investment team, which is where I sit, and also our investor relations team. And that's kind of evenly split between Zurich and London. So we have these, both offices, and we kind of work as one team. We do very, the same things basically. And then I would say for Luxembourg, we have about between 65 and 70 employees. at the moment, and the functions vary. So I would say it's about a third of that is kind of technology and eFront. Obviously, BlackRock, which you would have seen in the news, acquired eFront about 18 months ago now, and there is there are some roles focusing on that and the integration with the broad, Aladdin and the broader BlackRock platform in Luxembourg. And then other types of positions are accounting types of functions, business operations, digital marketing. What else? We have risk and quantitative analysis. So various functions.
And my question here would be, do you think it's quite often that people move in between European offices? So let's say you started working in Zurich, would it be possible for you to move to Luxembourg or the other way around or elsewhere?
Yeah, I would say the culture is definitely flexible. There should be some business sense to it, but I would say BlackRock is very open in terms of mobility, which is one of the things that surprised me actually positively when I joined, because other organizations might say they are, but they just make it very hard. I think BlackRock really encourages it. So I think if there is business, if there is business rationale, then definitely it could happen.
And how many people do apply for the job? So how many candidates do you have applying for the same position when you advertise this? For example, if we take about the private equity team.
Yeah, so I'll speak more empirically. I didn't run the stats with HR, so please don't blame me if the numbers are not entirely right. So if I look at the last let's say 2 rounds where we recruited for analyst positions, I think it was I would say it was we received about between 500 to 800 CVs online, but these roles are widely widely marketed, and a lot of the CVs that you include might not necessarily be eligible or suitable for the role. So that number obviously is very large, but it includes everything. And then we try to kind of narrow it down, work out who is eligible for the position, who has the appropriate background, and kind of work our way back. And I would say we end up kind of physically reviewing between around 50 to 100 CVs.
And talking about suitable and eligible CVs, do you hire, for example, from non-European Union countries? This is a question that we get a lot, and there are many people in the neighbor countries which are not within the European Union. So do you ever hire, and if you do, what kind of a profile would that be?
I think they are so non-European applicants are a little bit more challenging, but I think it does happen. Especially if we like the candidate and we want them, I think it's there is a possibility. It's obviously for them, at least if I look at Switzerland, there are requirements in terms of when you have to prove to the Swiss government that person kind of is bringing something new, and they're not. I guess they're in a sense not replaceable by someone in country. So it is easier to argue for more senior positions as opposed to kind of entry-level positions. But I would say we do have a number of offices in Europe. Obviously, BlackRock has offices across Europe, and there are different regulations across. So it depends. A candidate might be easier to be hired in London versus Switzerland, for example. So it really depends on the profile, the position, and the geography.
And what profiles are more difficult to find? Like some skilled but let's say younger people, or some very skilled top-level professionals?
I would say I think there are challenges in both. We have more recently been recruiting for more junior roles, so more analyst and associate type of roles. And I think the challenge with these roles is we're trying to target a wide range of applicants, and also have have different people. We really don't want to have people who have like cookie cutter same CVs, and we'd like to bring people who bring something different. I think the challenge is that there are certain universities across Europe that are very finance focused, and they really prepare people to go to these interviews and do the financial models, answer all the right questions. So places like St. Gallen, Bocconi, things like that, and candidates from those universities tend to be very well prepared and know everything. But we are trying to actually broaden the scope and actually find candidates with a more diverse set of background, both from an education perspective and in terms of experiences and what they did. So the challenge is finding someone who has a genuine interest in this, understands what we do and what finance is, but at the same time has a bit more of a different background. I think for senior positions the question becomes, I think the challenges there are more, once you're a little bit more senior, you have been through various organizations, so you're kind of, if you'd like, your professional personality has been shaped to a certain extent, and it's making sure that we find people who have the right fit for the team and understand how the team operates and are okay with it and are willing to operate in that context.
And I know you have a dedicated HR team which takes care of all the CVs, right? And one more question that I have in this field is this process digitalized? So when I would send the CV, would it first be reviewed by computer and checking if I have the right words in it, and then it would pass to the actual HR team person?
Mm-hmm. It is to a certain extent digitalized, and it's mainly, I think it's mainly when it comes to eligibility, as I said. So for example, when we recruit for a graduate program, the criteria there that it needs to be people who are at their last year of university studies, and we would get CVs, from everyone, and people who are not necessarily in their last, they're older or they're younger. So we like the screening process is about kind of eligibility, and we put some criteria around kind of when have people graduated and what makes sense. So that's the first stage, and that will probably kind of screen out a bulk of the CVs, and then HR will have a first go and kind of putting together a set of CVs that they think would be suitable, and then that's pretty broad, and so we'll end up kind of with, as I said, about 50 to 100, and then those CVs will kind of review manually as a team.
And I think you mentioned that slightly when you were talking about yourself, but is it common that people could get a job while being introduced? And how important do you think is networking in this field of work?
I think networking is probably important everywhere. It is important in this field of work as well. I would say for positions where it's really helpful is in the first stage. So kind of making people aware of you, because if you have like 1,000 CVs for a role, you might miss some people through that process. So if you have someone who can internally refer you, I guess you're kind of you can be part of that pile. So for that initial stage, I think it's helpful. But then obviously when it comes to the interview stage, I think everyone is on an equal footing. So it's really how you perform at the interviews and the assessment center.
So before I move on to, I can see that we have one question arriving, and I would like to remind you that if you have questions that you would like to ask, please make sure you do it in advance so we can answer all of them at the end. Please do that, and we will review all of them in just 10-15 minutes. And the next question I would like to ask you, Persefoni, is at what stage do you meet people who are supposed to enter your team. So first there is an HR team, and at what point do you meet the person yourself? And do you have the right to say yes or no?
So we really do this as a team, and we make sure we meet people as soon as possible, because we want to make sure we're hiring people that have the right team fit. So typically, I guess COVID has changed how things are going. So I'm talking about the more traditional process now. So you can kind of assume Zoom calls somewhere in that, in that for COVID, but we would typically, either have a video call or, for graduate positions, we have, this system where there are 2 questions and candidates are given some time to respond on video, and then we would look at people's videos of their responses. And that will be like all of us will do it in the team, and then we'll meet them for the first round, and then we'll meet them at the at the assessment center. And typically within those rounds, everyone in the team would have met all the candidates, and they would have opined on their preferences and what they think, and then we sit all together and kind of tally and have a discussion about our preferences and who we think is the right fit.
Did you ever refuse someone? Like, oh no, this is a mismatch.
Yes, we've had candidates that performed strong, that were strong in the I guess in the assessment center, but we thought they wouldn't be a good team fit, so they were not on the list. So yeah, it does happen. We're really looking for both.
Do you have a personal, no, or a yes? For example, maybe you're looking for a perfect team player, or some other qualities that you personally think are very important for your team.
So then, yes. I think absolutely. On the no side, I would say just anyone who, and to give you a little bit of background, the team is not hierarchical, and everyone is very much encouraged to say their opinions. And actually, when we do review investment opportunities, we'll have deal team catch-ups, and always for the deal team catch-ups, the more junior person will start first, and they'll say their opinion, and then the person above them, and then the last person who speaks is the senior person. And we do that so that the junior people don't get influenced by the senior person's opinion. So it's very much a culture where everyone speaks. So a big no would be people who kind of interrupt other candidates during, if we have like a group study, so people who interrupt us, which has happened, or just people who do not seem that they would be good team players. It is really like a job where you have to get along with the team. So that's very important.
And when you hire people, you probably have an image of what kind of education and what kind of certificates they need to have. So what about this? Like, what do you pay attention to? If the person is coming, what is like absolutely important to have to get this job?
Yeah. So for more junior roles, obviously education is more important. So we would look at, we typically don't require any certifications, and we wouldn't, I think they're nice to have, but we wouldn't necessarily kind of, if someone has the CFA, I think that's great, but it wouldn't necessarily be a big part of our decision-making process. I think we would focus on, university, what did they study, how well did they do, if they have good grades, which should show some kind of evidence of hard work and dedication. And then we would look at internships. Obviously, it helps if they have had previous internships where they have done something similar, or just broadly in finance, or they have shown that they do have an interest in this and they want to pursue this. It obviously does help, but it's for more junior roles or entry level roles, it's not a must-have, and I would say as you kind of progress up, when you go to kind of senior analyst, associate positions, and further up, then you look at previous experience, and you want to make sure that they do have demonstrated an interest in wanting to work in private equity. They would understand the basics of what do you look for when you look for an investment opportunity. Some knowledge of financial modeling, etc. So yeah. Work experience matters more than.
And do you encourage people to learn further while they work for BlackRock?
Yes. So BlackRock has BlackRock Academies, which is this huge database that has, anything you can imagine in terms of kind of presentation skills, workshops, or learning things about finance, and it could be a broad spectrum, right? So, for example, I work in private equity. I don't necessarily know, a lot about ETFs. So there would be kind of, courses around that. So it's a big part of the culture. We have this. There is this kind of student of the month type of award with BlackRock that people try to aim. So there's definitely a lot of encouragement in terms of broadening your skill set.
And do you have internships? If I'm just a very young student and I just want to start, do you have these options?
Yeah, so we have summer internship programs both in London and Zurich, and that would be for students who are before their last year of university. And we also do spring insight programs. So they tend to be kind of for people who are 2 years before their last year of university, and they're week long, and they're in the spring, and they're just like a nice introduction to our team. I think it's a great way for people to get to know us. So people will typically kind of sit with us. They'll have an introductory call. We'll speak to them about what we do, and then they'll work on a kind of case study with some of the team members and present at the end of the week, which is fun.
And there is also a question that we kind of get a lot. What if you want to start working in private equity, but you have a different kind of background? It's probably still related to finance, obviously, because I'm not sure you can work in private equity if you don't have a financial background. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, so if you were working in a different field, but you want to change and start working for private equity, how possible is it? Do you really have to downgrade a lot in order to switch? What's your feeling about it?
So I think it's less important for analysts and associates. So it's, I would say you can definitely do it there. The more senior you get, the harder it becomes. So from, I would say, VP and above, it becomes more challenging, and there has to be a little bit of a link. Typically, profiles that we would look from alternative industries are banking, management consulting, anyone who has a similar setup to to BlackRock, like any of our kind of competitors. So that type of background. But for analysts and associates, I think it's probably definitely for analysts it's a bit less relevant.
All right, and I think just probably a last question from me is, at LPA, it's our favorite, it's women in private equity. We have a club which is called Private Equity for Women, and we try to make sure that all panels have a woman as a part of the discussion. And you are actually the first solo woman that I have as a guest for this webinar. So I would like to ask, and it's a question that's it's always coming up. It's always hot. How do you feel being a woman in finance? Do you think it's hard? Do you think that people expect more from you, or people expect you to be like men? And do you think there is freedom for you, like to be who you are, like without matching someone's image?
I think you definitely still encounter kind of awkward situations for sure. I think it was more, for me personally, it was more at the start of my career. And I think it was because, I guess you're in a sense more vulnerable at that stage, but also because there was less awareness. So 2008, 2009, 10, there was much less awareness around the topic, and it's very I'm very happy to see that has starting to change now, and some of the things that used to happen are less likely or don't happen anymore. I think it's still challenging, and you do encounter the situations, but obviously you also learn how to respond better to it. And it's important to kind of find role models and find people that you look up to, and find kind of your support group, basically, whether that's more senior men or women. But it's important for your development, and also to build your confidence and be able to operate in this in this industry.
And do people who are coming and looking for a job ask you if BlackRock takes care of like ESG things and of diversity? Like, does this interest candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of, BlackRock has been very vocal about this. Larry Fink announced our commitment to net zero this year as well. So I think it's a subject that, obviously candidates know, that is a big subject for us. But I think it's also, for them, it's a subject that's more, that's important, even more so now. So we do get a lot of questions on this. I think as a team, we have certainly incorporated ESG practices into our portfolio companies for some time now. So it is a big topic. It's a topic whenever we go to our investment committee. So it's we decide based on ESG due diligence and considerations as well. And I guess over the last I would say 18 months to 2 years, we're also thinking about a more dedicated private equity impact strategy. So for people who have an interest in this, it would be it would be great thing to be involved in as part of our team. So invest in some kind of impact thematic investments around climate, resources, health and well-being, financial inclusion, and education.
Thank you, Persefoni. So I think we'll now get to Q&A. So please, if you have questions, just type it in the Q&A section so I can see them. So the first question is, since you are looking for more diverse backgrounds, do you also hire juniors without strong financial modeling experience, Excel wizards? What positions within BlackRock would you suggest for impact-oriented individuals with background in management, finance, but not quants?
So let me start with the first part. So for analysts, for sure, I think, you don't need to be a financial modeling wizard. I think what we are looking for, and we really don't expect it when we meet people. I think what we're looking for is a genuine interest in the sector. So if someone who doesn't have the background, and wouldn't necessarily know everything about modeling, if they really are interested in terms of LBO modeling and working in private equity, we would expect that they would have gone online, Googled it, understand kind of the basics of just the idea of how an LBO works and what it does and what's a free cash flow. So we would expect that, which which is for us, it's like a way of illustrating interest or indicating that you are interested in this, but they're definitely not expecting wizards at the analyst level. We also offer, our team offers, annual modeling training. So we have 2 to 3 kind of trainings for analysts that, people can attend on a recurring basis every year, which are super helpful. So there is definitely a lot of ways to educate when you're part of the team. And then on the second question around the impact, there are a number of initiatives. So BlackRock, has been putting a lot of attention on impact. There is a number of teams within BlackRock, both on the public side as well as the private market side that are focusing on kind of instruments that have, that follow an impact strategy or an ESG strategy. On our side, as I mentioned, it's a growing focus for us, and we are, we are in the process of kind of, thinking around an impact dedicated strategy within private equity. So I think that would be, a great fit and a great way to work both in private equity and in the space.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. For analyst and intern positions, which is the average work experience required, and non-finance work experience, does it impact the application?
I'm not gonna lie, so I'm not gonna say that it doesn't impact the application, because it's all on a relative basis. So whenever we run, we run a position, if we get 50 really good CVs with really good backgrounds and relevant experience, I think if someone doesn't have that, I think it's going to be harder. So it really depends on it's on a relative basis. But I would say typically we will expect to have at least at the kind of junior analyst level. We would expect some type of internships, not necessarily in private equity or even banking, but just some type of internship experience. It could be kind of like at a startup, or it could be at the corporate. It could be like it could be different things. We have people who worked a little bit on in VC funds or did internships in VC funds. So just some sort of internship experience to kind of understand who you are and understand what your interests are basically. But obviously the less junior is the role, the less this matters. So for internships, definitely we don't expect prior experience. And then for junior analysts, we are flexible, but typically from what we see from CPs, people tend to have 1 or 2 internship experiences there.
So the next question for you is, what would you suggest to someone who is very interested in PE, but does not come from a top 5 business schools to stand out with their CV?
Is this, I guess this is for a more, so business schools meaning MBA, right? So I assume it's for a more senior position as opposed to an entry level. I think, so I will respond on that basis. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess, as I said, for more senior positions, education doesn't counts less. So we would typically look at your work experience. If you're not in the sector, I think if you're in a related sector, working in a corporate as part of, like, let's say their M&A team in-house or finance team in-house, or you do have demonstrated experience in some area of financial services, I think that helps. I would say it is important to network. It would be good to meet people that do either private equity or similar type of roles, and understand exactly, what the requirements are, whether they are recruiting, and just broaden your network and really understand, what they do, because ultimately I think when you get invited to interviews, you have to show that you understand what the team actually does. You understand their day-to-day, and you understand what private equity is. So the more you can illustrate that during interviews, so the more background reading you do, the more you speak to people, the less people are going to care about what your CV is like.
And I think I have a question which relates to the previous answer, I assume. So the question is an internship in Big Four audit relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. For assuming analyst positions, I think we do get a few CVs that have internships from the Big Four.
Okay, so now I have a long question from Julia. So hello and thank you for insights so far. Thank you, Julia. We hope it's very useful for you. So my question relates to career building during the transition from one industry to another. I'm currently studying towards my MBA degree, finance focused. However, my professional background is in the retail industry, sales and business development. What advice would you give someone like me to break into financial services without previous consulting or financial experience? What competencies would you like to see on the CV? Also, do you have internships for MBA students? Many thanks.
Thank you for your question, Julia. So we don't do a specific MBA internships or MBA hires. So it would be for us, if a more kind of senior position, so not graduate analyst, but kind of anything above that opens up. It would depend on whatever that level of experience is. We're waiting if it's like an analyst 2, an analyst 3, if it's an associate. So it really depends on whatever the role is. Then we'll look for an equivalent kind of background. And for these type of, for associate positions, we would receive CVs, MBA CVs. I think, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you have a different background pre-MBA. I think that gives you a perspective, a different perspective than people who come from finance. So, retail is quite a, consumer retail, digital consumer are very popular sectors within private equity. So, if you can demonstrate some knowledge and kind of turn this around into your advantage, I think that could really help you. And then, as I said, for the previous question, it's more about, just, finance is not rocket science. At least that's, I think it's not. So you can kind of, educate yourself and go on Google and find out things, read books about private equity, talk to people. So the more you can kind of absorb this information and kind of demonstrate in an interview that you understand it, then people are not gonna, care about your background so much.
And so the next question is, how would you suggest people prepare for the interviews?
I think you really, I think it's important to know who you're speaking to. So I would prepare by knowing, the people in the team and their backgrounds a little bit. It's important to know the organization and just kind of go on their website, look at what they, recent announcements, what they have done. So anything in the news. Generally for this type of positions, for private equity, I think it's important to go on the news and kind of read about recent transactions within private equity that happened, anything that kind of triggered your interest, that you can demonstrate during an interview. And then I would prepare on the financials, on the financial modeling aspect, by kind of looking at a simple, like a template LBO model, understanding how roughly that's built, understanding how you build a free cash flow, and then reading online about what what do private equity investors care about, what types of businesses would they go for, what type of leverage would they put. So just understanding, just some of the key things about private equity, and then again, as I said, speaking to people who work in the industry is always the best thing, and it's for you it's a great way to see if this is something that you really want to do, and if the day-to-day job kind of suits you, and you really want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Persefoni, and how important is mentorship?
I think it's hugely important. I think I don't think you can force it. Personally, I think there are different schools of thought around this. I personally, at least for me in my career, the mentorships that I had happened more naturally because I worked with people. They enjoyed working with me. I enjoyed working with them, and it just developed as a natural relationship. But it's definitely you learn a lot. Especially when you start as an analyst, you learn from from the associates. You'll learn from the associates in the group, and they'll teach you everything. At least that's what happened for me. So it's important to have these relationships. Going back to the big no-nos, I would say we do get candidates, who come in and they would, treat the associates in our team different than they would treat me, for example, because I'm a director, and that's certainly a big no-no for me. I think that's, the people you learn from are generally the people like right above you, because they have just been through what you are going through. So yeah, mentorship is very important.
I think we are over with questions. I will just give 1 minute for people. If someone wants to ask a question, please type it in the Q&A section now. I would also like to ask you, we do these webinars every month, and we do these webinars for you, so we can get you the information you are looking for and you cannot find. So you have a chance to ask people from the company you wish to work for any questions that you like, so you can get information which is important for you. So please comment under our LinkedIn post or type it in the survey. Let us know which guests you would like to have in future, which topics you would like to be covered, and we will try to get these guests for you so you can have a chance to talk to them. And I think we have a question coming. Persefoni, get ready.
Great.
What are the hours for an internship or junior level? Thank you.
I was surprised this didn't come earlier. I was waiting for that question. So we don't have standard hours, which I'm sorry, I know this is not what you want to hear. I think it's not, I would say it's not a 9-to-5 job. It is a job that requires like a commitment to it, but I would say as a team we're very careful around how we manage resources, and we really try to not kill people. We're very conscious if someone is working on a project and they've done long hours on that project, they get a break from it afterwards, and we place a lot of emphasis around managing resources and distributing resources accordingly. And also there's no, we try to minimize work wherever we can. And there's no kind of FaceTime. There's no, because, you do have organizations where FaceTime is important. I think obviously COVID has kind of made that a bit redundant, but even before COVID, I would say, we didn't have a culture like that at all. And the hours you would be working would be towards an actual goal and a project, and it wouldn't be, just on things that don't go anywhere, and they are, you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, basically.
And I'm here, I have a question in the middle here. Is it more important for you that the person works a particular amount of hours per day, or is it more important for you that they bring the result?
No, it's the result for sure.
Thank you. Yes. So, so we have one more question. Do you think a middle office role like operations or project management in PE is a good career start for a graduate? I am a graduate student major in business management. I'm wondering the career path of middle office in PE. Thank you in advance. I think yes. So the person is probably considering the career path in middle office. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely there's definitely roles like that. As I said, I wouldn't consider it middle office, but apart from we have our kind of investment team, but very much front office is also our investor relations team. They do a slightly different thing than we do, so they focus more on the client interaction and the fundraising aspect, but they are very much aware also of our portfolio, and we work together with them. We would attend client meetings, so that's a different type of role, and then there's more kind of middle office roles in terms of reporting, accounting, reporting. So we do have those positions. I would say those positions tend to be more London based, as opposed to kind of in other European offices, but I think that's certainly something that's available.
Okay, perfect. So I think that was the last question, I think. I would like to remind everyone that tomorrow we have an interview with Alpha Private Equity with Akikul Islam. It's a part of PEVC Luxembourg Stories. Then we have public affairs webinar for our members on the 27th of April. Then we have biotech webinar coming up, and the webinar with United States, which you can also visit, and you can find all these events in the event section on our website. Persefoni, thank you very much for coming, for answering all the questions. I hope it was useful for everyone and people could get insights, and hopefully it will help them to find jobs and be successful in their career. Let us know if you who you would like to see next time. Text us, email us, comment under the post, let us know. Thank you very much for attending. Persefoni, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.